Hey guys, we're here at Allied Bikes and this guy's giving us a tour.
This is where our cutting room is. Come on in. Thank you. All right, so this is where everything really starts with regards to the process. And we get our carbon in a unidirectional format, which means that it is extruded into a unidirectional linear fiber orientation that you can see on that blue ream right there. It's called pre-preg carbon. Pre-preg means that it's already injected with whatever resins and materials that are going to ultimately break down and adhere to itself during the curing and the baking process, right? And so we get it from a company called Mitsubishi. They're based in California. They get the raw carbon from other places in the United States. And so really the majority of the material that we use is sourced, extruded, and shipped to us for final production, all from U.S.-based companies.
That's awesome.
It's a really nice story to tell. You know, some people find it more important than others, but we really do like that fact. It's kind of carbon that's really specific to us because we're the only one making bikes right now in the United States out of carbon. How the process goes is we will kind of roll out the carbon, we'll take it to the table. There's a vacuum that turns on to kind of suck the carbon to the table so it doesn't wrinkle up as it's being cut. This boom arm on this cutting table really is just a knife, like a blade. Okay. And there's a Sharpie marker on it as well.
Ooh,
and it
sorry, I'm sorry, I'm standing
Come
right
on in.
the door. Come on in. You're good, she's good. You can, I'm sorry.
Come on.
I'm so sorry.
Oh, no. Mom!
It wasn't me.
Oh, it's all right. It's all right. We had him up here. Sorry, we're just coming in here messing up your work
I'm
here.
gonna make a disaster of your
Michigan
place.
wrecking crew here.
Listen.
Did you bump that?
I don't know, I might have.
Oh,
I'm
it's
really
okay.
sorry.
It's okay. Don't worry about it.
Disaster stuff.
No, we're good.
I was blocking the door too.
And you said that's like a knife, not laser?
Correct. Not a laser.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what happened. I think it was leaning and it rolled.
Henry, she's going back.
All right. All good.
Sorry.
All good. All
I'm
good.
so sorry.
No, you're fine. So yeah, so it's just a blade, but what happens is this computer has a software. Loaded into the software is whatever part that this is going to end up cutting, and it'll cut the pieces for that part. We don't cut like an entire bike at a time. It's going to be, if we want to pick on the mountain bike, it'll be a rear triangle, cut all the pieces for the rear triangle, and then there's another cut file for front triangles depending on the size, and we'll do that. And then for our gravel bikes, you know, there's cut files for the bottom bracket, cut files for the fork, cut files for the main triangle, cut files for all the other carbon that we use, like 3K, which is the thicker stuff that Brittany just pulled off of the table that we use around like bottom brackets and fork crowns and water bottle boss areas where there's a lot of different directions of carbon going. And then the table cuts and goes. There's numbers and letters that are written on just about every piece. That is a kind of order of how they're going to be stacked on top of one another during the layup process. We do stack a lot of different layers of carbon depending on the area of the bike and the bike itself. You know, some places need more carbon than others to get the stiffness and all the performance characteristics of that bike to come out, and that's what is done here. When we take up those pieces of carbon, we will kind of start to pre-stack and kit them together. They then go into these blue bins. When all of the parts for that bike are kind of collected in the bin, it'll then travel over to the layup room for layup.
So each blue bin is one bike?
Yes, it will be one bike. Yeah, for sure. You know, depending on the bike, depending on the size, there's going to be several hundred pieces of carbon in each bike, for sure. Bigger bikes have more carbon, smaller bikes have just a few less. But yeah, so let's go across the hall, and we'll show you the layup.
You'll be happy to see that.
I saw that.
Yes, Sawyer.
Yeah, watch your step. That's a sneaky one.
Oh, yep.
Still gets me too. All right. come on, close the door. So this is the layup room. The goal here is to take all of those small pieces that we just cut and form them into the part, and then we put that part into the final assembly, which are these CNC'd pieces of aluminum. We call them tools, we call them molds. I'll use those words kind of interchangeably, but that's ultimately what gets put onto the carbon press. And then when it comes out, it's going to be a hard, tube that you probably would now recognize as a part of the bike. But in order to get to that, there's a lot of preforming and forming that just has to happen to get something to be accepted into the mold. And what we use primarily to do that are these latex bladders. These latex bladders are used kind of like a dual purpose. So we will load them with couscous. Actually, you see that blue funnel in the couscous jar over there, and we put it into the bladder, and then we put a vacuum line on it, and we suck the air out of it, and that's what gives it an initial shape to use as a preform. Right? So they will use that to preform, then they'll empty out the couscous, they'll leave the bladder in, because during the press time, we hook an air line up to the bladder, and then the bladder injects air pressure into the system, because depending on how many layers you have there, you need to smash them all together to make sure they're all the same thickness and there's no air bubbles or voids or anything like that in them. And so it kind of serves a dual purpose. So kind of think of it as you're putting an inner tube in a flat tire. That's what's happening here. And they do have lifespans. They can get pinched. They can do all of those very same things like an inner tube in a bicycle tire. The goal is to not have that happen, but since it's a piece of latex, it can happen. And when it happens, we classify that as a failure. The failure doesn't mean like it blows up or anything like that. It just means that the system isn't pressurized. It will not cure the way it needs to, and we do have to scrap that.
Can you reuse it?
No, not really. You can't. Yeah, you can't hit the rewind button and have it kind of look like this again, because once it's heated up, all of those resins that it's already injected with, they kind of break down, and you can't reverse it. Okay.
Also, you said that's in there when you're making the frame, right?
Correct.
So do you remove it?
Yeah. So when we take the frame out, this is empty, and there's no more air in there, so you can just pull it out. Yeah.
That makes sense.
So even though we'll pick on the mountain bike because that's predominantly what we're making right now. What Tim just did is he closed up an entire front triangle mountain bike tool. We don't make the front triangle as like a whole part. It has to get preformed in several pieces, and then they get assembled together, and then the whole front triangle gets thrown into that tool, right? So a top tube will get made, a down tube will get made, a seat tube will get made, and they all have their own individual bladders, and then they get placed into the main triangle preform tool. Then we also have to kind of lock them in with sub-assemblies around the shock mount areas and the main pivot hardware and all that sort of stuff. And then it gets ready to get put into the tool. So it's several different operations that come together to make one complete main triangle. And so that's kind of the pull system that we have here, is one table is going to pull from another table to start to, the snowball effect into ultimately having the main triangle be complete, right? So now that Tim tossed that bike out of there, I'll show you where we're going to go next. It's going to go to the carbon presses, and that's where the actual process of heating up and pressurizing the bike is going to go. Follow me, we'll go out here. Okay, so these three things are carbon presses. The top and the bottom plate are heated, clamp down with a bunch of pressure, and then we hook up air lines to the latex bladders that you can see on that far one over there, and that's what injects pressure into the system. That runs for about an hour, and the combination of temperature and physical pressure and air pressure will basically be the three things needed to break down all of the resin and get it to glue to itself. And then the air pressure that we inject, make sure everything pressurizes to, you know, the shape of the inside of that mold, and then it's going to start taking the form of whatever tube that it is. So since we saw a main triangle getting closed, I'll show you what that looks like. This is one we had to scrap, but it still looks the same anyway. So this is what the main triangle looks like when it comes out of the mold. There's a little bit more, this one has already been sandblasted to get rid of a lot of the flashing and excess carbon that's generally around the areas where parting lines are. But for all intents and purposes, it will look very similar to this when it comes out of the mold. You know, you can see the different areas that we have 3K carbon versus regular unidirectional carbon, things like that. But
You said that one was scrapped?
yeah, we had to scrap this one. The bladder probably had a leak in one of the areas and it didn't cure all the way, so
So that one won't be a bike?
that one will not be a bike. We're gonna scrap this one. It's a drag because, you know, our drop bar bikes, our gravel bikes, there's 7 parts that make up one of those bikes, and on a mountain bike there's only 2. And so up until we made the mountain bike, our scrap rate was less than 8%, which is great, because if you if you fail a seat stay, or if you fail, heck, even a main triangle, it's from a percentage of overall material standpoint, it's a lot less. But when you fail a main triangle, that's 66% of the bike, which sucks.
Yeah.
So, but it happens.
What do you do with it once it...
We scrap it. There are carbon recycling options, but it actually costs a lot of money to recycle it, and we just can't afford to recycle it, which is kind of a big bummer. But yeah, there isn't a super great solution right now to do it, but someday what I want to do when the painters have some free time, I want to use these to section out and paint out and offer like a nice color menu to our retailers that I can kind of send as like a sample.
Absolutely. You could even give them to local artists and they could do something like that.
Yeah. How light is that? Like, is it like plastic? Like you hold like a bin. Is it like as light as like the
Oh,
lid?
here, pick it up.
Oh. Oh yeah, that's like that feels like plastic.
Yeah.
It's like crazy. It feels like you're just picking up like a piece of plastic.
I know. Well, I mean, technically it is kind of plastic because there's resins in it and stuff like that. But yeah, carbon's light. It's the lightest, strongest material you can make a bike out of. All right, so let's go over here. So after we collect all the parts in these bins, we have to prep them before we can bond them together to make a bike. And the prep process is several steps depending on the bike, but we have to sandblast every part to make sure all the excess carbon is off. We have to areas that we have 2 parts being bonded together, we have to put each of those parts in a CNC router to like crisp up the area that's going to be bonded together. We have to drill hydraulic hose exit ports if it's not molded in. We have to drill water bottle bosses if they're not molded into that particular bike.
Is that the sandblast? The thing that the guy was using?
Yeah, that's the sandblaster over there.
That's so cool.
And then what Tiffany's doing right now is she just finished bonding in a bottom bracket shelf. That's kind of where we start the bonding, is with the bottom bracket. So we take, this is the bottom bracket shelf, so your crank arms, you know, go into this.
Press fit bottom brackets?
Hell no.
Oh, I love it.
No way.
That's so cool.
No. So this is an easy place to use as a starting point for bonding. And so we prepare this with a lot of epoxy, and we have some jigs. I'll show you over here. Don't touch that.
Yeah.
So the bottom bracket section of the bike that Tiffany just had, she locks the chainstays in here. She puts the bottom bracket in there, and then she'll thread the bottom bracket onto this tool, and then basically just slide the bottom bracket into the frame. And then this jig normally goes into an oven to heat up, and then it cures the epoxy. And then what we'll do is we'll, here, I'll show you. So we'll take that section of the bike and we anchor it to this anvil jig. And then we prep the rest of the parts that are going to get bonded together, like the seat tube, and then they bond the seat tube on. And then they prep the top tube and the down tube, and they put that on. And then the last two parts are the seat stays. And then they get it to the angles, you know, they need to get it to for the size of bike that it is. And then they wheel that entire jig into that big green oven behind you with the chimney sticking out. And that does, it just cures the epoxy faster. When it comes out of there and it cools down, structurally, it's about the way it's going to be the day that you ride the bike. You know, the epoxy is basically the glue and the strength of bonding those areas together. The only other thing we do remaining is we take what I describe to be like an ace bandage, a very thin strip of carbon, one or two layers thick, and it's specific in width to wherever we have bond areas on the bike. And we wrap it around there kind of like a brace, because when you have two parts of a bike together, it doesn't matter how small or how big you are, when you ride the bike they move, right? And they're kind of like a fault line, and if you don't brace them somehow with some material, over time it'll like make its way up to the surface of your paint, and it'll look like your bike is falling apart, but structurally it's totally fine. Cosmetically it doesn't look great, and it's just easy to prevent with a brace, and we call that overwrapping. So that's the only other thing that we do. And then when that's all done, then we go to the sanding station, and this is where all the cosmetic work now happens to get it ready for actual paint. Okay, so we'll go over here.
This is so cool, isn't it?
So for now, sanding is still a very manual process. It takes about 16 labor hours per bike to get it ready to go for paint, which is a lot. We can't physically sand the carbon, or we don't want. We can. We do not want to sand the carbon because we need all the carbon we can get. So we have to add some media to it to build up all those tiny little imperfections that carbon has, so we can sand it into the frame as well as off of it. And since we use automotive paint, we also use a series of automotive primers to do those three processes for us. And so we do 3 entire sanding jobs, 1, 2, and final sand. And we will use 3 different versions of primer, and we will use 3 different versions of sandpaper to execute that sanding process. Each of those steps takes about 5 to 6 hours, totaling about 16 hours of labor time per bike to get it ready to go. So in an effort to try to mitigate a lot of that labor and cost involved in it, we recently just got a cool piece of automation, which isn't fully operational yet, but it's pretty close. But this is a robotic arm that's going to be able to be programmed for our forks and our main triangles to take that sanding time and take about 60 to 75% of that time out of the process.
Wow.
We'll still need labor to operate it, but we can also flex labor into areas that that are not automated yet. And so it's going to really do a good job of hopefully taking some cost of goods out of the frame, because that is important to us, as well as allow us to throughput more through an area that otherwise is kind of a bottleneck for production.
So it'd
right?
still be mostly handmade.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
All this is doing is holding the bike, and all of these stations are sanding stations, and they're rotary, but inside of the sandpaper is a bladder, and the bladder is pressurized with air. And when the robotic arm places, there we go, he's going to turn it on now. So when the robotic arm places the fork in front of the sanding barrel knows what pressure it has to inflate to get the finish that we desire. And all of that is programmed by our engineer Richard, and it's taken a long time to do it. But when this thing's going, it's so cool. Like it's very mesmerizing to look at. It does, right? Yeah, come over here. There we go. It's going to pick up the fork from the carousel. It's going to start its sanding operation.
He has a lot of interest. Like if he wants to learn how to do something that hasn't been done before, he'll like write it off and then more himself.
It is mesmerizing. It's like going up and down.
You have to do it once based on your time. Yep. Unless it's like you're outside. Yep. We were trying to integrate something simple like you want to make.
So it's still in working on
Well, right now, Richard is programming it for all of our parts. The one that he's programmed first on the fork. So he's worked a lot with the fork he's using right now is for a model or called Able. And he spent the last 2 weeks just programming it to get it to be as good as it is when it's manually sanded. And the only thing manually that can be done is a little bit of touch-up work on areas that you just can't work with the robot. But the time it's already taken out of the fork alone is, I believe it's almost 50% of what it takes. The fork isn't huge because there's a lot of really broad like there's and so, 40-minute fork drive is now maybe 18. But the big games are going to be on the main triangle. Pretty cool, right? So what he did is he had to program several things. He had to program the robotic arm to rotate the fork. He had to program the robotic arm to articulate around the sanding drum. And then he had to program each sanding drum to incorporate pressure and speed to give the
I think when you're a competitor,
what is the
well, this is it's whatever program came from this company. So this arm came from Italy, and we had some guys come over and install it for us, and then they trained him on how to program it. It's in English, but the whole thing was made in a cool little town north of the Dolomites. So yeah, and then when this is all done and it goes through the 3 sanding phases, then we get everything ready to go for paint, and that's where we'll go next, is we're going to show you the paint.
Wait, which one is this one?
What's that?
Which one?
That's for sure.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's so cool. And he got to program all of that stuff?
Yes.
That's amazing.
He's a pretty smart cookie.
Yeah, all that stuff is super fascinating.
All right, so this is paint and finishing. We do things just a little bit different in paint. We don't use vinyl decals. We paint on our logo color as well as our body colors, and that's different combinations of colors on our bikes if you've ever been on our website. So the first color that any bike gets in the morning is going to be its logo color. Then they just spray the bike wherever we have a logo, and then they put a paint mask on it to mimic what our logo would be, and then they spray the entire bike the body color. When it dries, then they peel the mask off to reveal, the logo color.
Like a stencil.
Yep.
But like inverse. So
Yes.
like you paint that section, then you put the thing on, and then you paint over it, and then you peel it off, and then that's
So
really
he's
nice.
putting on what you just described as the stencil. It's actually a mask. So yeah,
Like
so
the
that's-
inverse stencil.
yeah. So the logo color on this bike will be what?
silver.
Right. So he's now putting the mask on it, and then
Oh, I see.
and then
it's
what
just
we're
like
gonna
a
do,
sticker.
yeah, what we're gonna do next is he's gonna paint the whole bike black, so you won't even see any silver. And then when the black dries, he peels off what he
Those
just put
little
on
yellow
to
stickers?
reveal the silver.
Oh, cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
There's some yellow on it too.
Well, that's just the color of the mask.
Those are the stickers. So that's like the mask. So you can tell.
Once we paint it black, I take a razor blade and we peel the sticker
Peel that
off.
right off.
And then you
Because
can see
if
the
it,
silver.
because like you wouldn't really be able to tell where it was if it was like a dark color.
So this process takes, I mean, they can do the whole painting like this in a day, but then the following morning is when the final clear coat, either matte or gloss, gets applied, and then ship it over to the assembly room over there.
How long did you say this takes?
This takes a day.
Painting, but the clear coating for that.
Whoa. See, look at that's
There was
the
silver underneath.
We have to do a decent amount of
whoa.
final paint check
it.
to make sure there's no
Oil
debris or
slick.
runs in the clear coat or weird little fisheye things and stuff like that. And then Roy gets done and it finally passes out of the world of paint. It goes into the world of assembly, and we just stage everything to get assembled. Chris and Shane are the guys that do all of the mechanic work. Normally, if we sell bikes direct to you, they get assembled all the way up. They get tuned and brakes bled and all that, and then we put them in a very large box. So when you get it, all you have to do is put the front wheel on and essentially go for a ride.
Oh,
and
nice.
then if we are the retailers that we work with, we put a frame in a box and parts in different boxes and just send it that way so they can do the build. So
Did you see the color?
I love it.
You had to get in on that?
I did.
Did you see the color just for trying?
Yeah, do you see that one right there?
Oil slick.
That was that's our perfect.
we do, so that is in a family of paint schemes called Harlequin. Harlequin is when two colors are kind of engineered together to swap between those two colors, and so that's one of the few paints that we buy pre-mixed, but we have 5 or 6 offerings of it. That's purple to green, that's one of our more common,
they've got
and
like a
that's the main
bronze.
triangle to go with it. We have this one, which is called copper to blue or copper to green or something like that, which is kind of cool,
Well,
right?
you can see like when you when you turn
Sorry,
it.
we're like super nerdy about this stuff.
No, I love that you guys are excited about it.
Like when you turned it, it changed from the two colors.
Magenta to gold is another one that's kind of screaming.
So
See?
it's like magenta, and then it's like an orange gold, like copper bronze sort
Are
of.
these all like special order?
Yeah, that's really all we do. We do. I
That
am
matte bronze one's
morally
really cool.
opposed to keeping painted stock of bikes because whatever color I tell is going to be stock, it's probably not going to be the color you're going to want. So we can't. We just don't want to do that. So, and then this is the purple to green.
That's basically like the oil slick that.
Yes, I remember about that. Is that a small?
This is small. Yeah.
What size would I be?
Small.
Ooh,
Well, your small might their small might be a little big for you still. But a small one.
look
fit.
at that like coppery bronze color,
This is that.
but like matte.
Just matte. And
That's
so
awesome. I would
it doesn't
imagine.
flop as much.
But like
It's
it's
more subtle, but you can
more
see
of a
both
subtle-
colors in it.
That's so cool.
Honestly, that'd be cool if you had that in matte.
We've done that in matte actually quite a bit.
Ooh.
It is interesting, but like I said, you don't get to really see.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't
And
flop.
that's its corresponding
Yep.
piece.
You guys get the trail ready?
Try to, yeah.
Every now and again he does it.
Ooh, that's a nice one.
But that's it, gang.
Oh, that's so cool. Thank you.
awesome.
Isn't it so easy?
Oh, yeah, right.
Jeff, did you see the green one up there?
Yeah.
That's his favorite color.
Did you see?
Midnight blue. It just does something to me.
So the
That's
majority
an
of these
that's a nice color. Yeah.
It changes.
That midnight blue and coral is actually really nice.
That's pretty sweet.
We see them all though, so the calendar goes and be tired of it.
Goes
We're
hard.
doing it like that.
Hold on, get one shot.
I do love that midnight blue though.
Classic.
This is awesome.
I also like the mat.
So that's how you do it forward. Well, for the people.
For the kids?
And a mat back.
It's kind of our standard color. And anything else you want. You just order a bike. That's kind of like.
This is awesome.
What do you think, Creamy?
So can you do like a color with the black?
How far away from the ball?
Like with the logo? Yeah, you can do any logo. You can pretty much, we don't do like custom like design.
Sure.
And we try not to do too many fade jobs, but
Sure.
as far as color combos, like that purple goes with that blue rear end. So that's a really, we don't do a lot of, we don't mismatch
That would
front
be-
rear often.
okay.
That'd be
Those two go
interesting.
together.
So the purple triangle with
Goes
the blue.
with the blue.
Yeah.
Huh,
So the
interesting.
logos match, but then the colors.
Okay, alright.
That's interesting.
But you can pretty much any color under the sun, you can match it.
In the
A little too
front,
much color. for
yeah,
me, but-
in the front I saw one had fade with like speckles on it. It looked really nice.
Yeah, that's a custom one. We charge like, I think it's like $1,000 upcharge to
Ooh.
paint that color. That's
Mean.
our professional racer. That's his signature color.
Ah, professional race ordered that?
No, we have a
Oh.
professional racer that races for us.
Oh, nice,
And that's his
nice.
signature.
That's
bike.
awesome.
Can you tell us which racer it is?
Payson McKelvin.
Okay.
I don't know who that is. How do you?
Hey, but that guy put the whooping on. Hey, you guys, you need to realize that this guy's fast too.
I'm just a professional bike assembler.
Hey, he's all
I mean, that's a professional
put the
club.
whooping on Payson.
Alright, good for you.
I mean,
So what's your signature bike color then? You just said the black, huh?
Mine's plain. My mountain bike's just silver.
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 I mean, that's so
silver
nice.
with like black logos with rainbow flake.
ooh,
So it's kind of a subtle color on the rainbow
but
flake.
also like nice.
Did you make your bike?
I assembled it. So I just assemble. I don't do the manufacturing part of it.
Okay.
So we all do part of the process.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
It's awesome in here.
It's all here. Everything you get here is, that's the thing though too. I don't know how they do it in Taiwan or anything. But here we're putting love into it.
Yeah.
We're putting
Yeah.
we're putting love into it.
Roy's like, I love you, buddy.
No, I'm serious. It's because also too, so we sign off on everything. We initial and stuff, and I think that that's kind of like a big thing that really impresses in my mind is that whenever you put your name on something, you got to be proud of that.
Yeah.
Right?
I feel like essentially it's like, okay, whenever you're doing a bike and whenever you're doing your job on this bike, are you proud of it? Are you proud enough to put your initials on it, sign off of it, and then give it to the next person?
I love that.
That's
I
great.
ordered a
Awesome.
frame today.
Roy, I teach kindergarten,
turnaround time?
and I say that we are don't quit till you're proud, right? Like it doesn't have to be perfect, but it has to be something that you are proud of showing off, right?
If you were a large
it's a
or
great
medium, it'd be
philosophy.
probably 10 to
That's
12.
amazing.
Yeah,
I got enough time to
Yeah.
that's so cool.
The smalls and extra larges are the two bookend
Okay.
sizes that we don't have a ton of orders in, so they're about 6 weeks.
Okay.
Oh, nice.
So then, frame stuffs come with, they come with shock and,
You know, that's comes with every one.
okay.
At least a shock. I like to, if you're just going to do a frame, I like to do suspension with it.
Right.
But if you are just have your own for them,
Right.
you don't want to sell it, then yes, we can do just the shock. And all that stuff is a la cartable on the website. The way that we have our customizer with all.
Good
Okay.
grief, I think we might be allied
So
bike owners.
it'd be great.
Oh man, I can fully get behind this.
Yeah,
I
Yes.
love my bike.
Jeff
but
is all about
this is like,
supporting.
I would
that everything
definitely.
is done right here.
Hey Dad, what do you think about me switching bikes?
About me switching bikes.
How about this?
What do you think about you getting
You're on
a job?
camera,
Yes.
Jeffrey. Be
Yeah.
careful what you
Yeah.
say.
How about this,
before you
Dad?
talk
I
to
got a
your wife.
9-year-old.
I sell my bike. I sell my bike and then I get one of these. Hey Dad,
Excited for when you can like get me these nice bikes. I was like, listen, man, are you excited about getting a job? Because that's the only way you're gonna afford these bikes.
I sell my bike
So,
and then I
up
get
until,
this.
well, when we first got married, she didn't ride. So for many years, I was the only cyclist in the family, so it was much more affordable.
He didn't
And now
tell
that
me how
now that all three of us ride,
Yeah.
and he's getting into adult
I
size
feel your
bikes.
pain, man. I
It's
haven't bought a new bike for myself in 3 years, but
And you work at a bike
my
company.
9-year-old has gotten 2 new bikes in the last 2 years. My 6-year-old has some pretty nice bikes. My wife is on her 2nd Allied now, and we're making her size small around here somewhere. And whenever I need to buy parts, it's like, what are we spending more money on bike stuff for? It's like, what? What do you mean we? You got bikes all over the place.
Right.
I just need to get these little jalopies running to mine. So
There you go, buddy. We call him Billy Goat.
That's awesome.
That's so
but
cool.
that's it. That's how we do it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And then you grill for lunch, huh?
Yeah. Once a month we do employee stuff here. Yeah.
Everyone seems like
I'll come down and make you lunch.
here. Yeah.
Hey, I mean, if that's how I can get a job,
That little area back there. Got some
honestly, I would get a job here, and then I could make money and then buy a
And buy
bike.
bikes. All right,
Exactly.
put it on pause, buddy. Put it on pause.
You like robots, don't you?
Yes.
Like you love the robot art.
Robots are the
This is
coolest.
awesome.
All right.
Well, thank you so much. What's your name?
Will.
Well, nice to meet you.
And what's your name?
Henry.
Henry. Man,
Nice to
I'm
meet
glad
you.
you could make it.
That was awesome. Thank you so much for the tour. In a second. Yeah, wasn't that arm so awesome to watch? So they just shipped it all the way here, and then they had to learn how to code all that.
So I don't think I mentioned this, but you guys have been kind of commenting on all the different colors. We get the big majority
This is the color he was talking about.
color ideas and actual formulas from cars because, you know, like I said, we use automotive paint. So we have a computer that, for example, this one that you'll like, this is actually a Nissan Sentra color. And so we put in the year and the make and the model of the Nissan Sentra, and it came out what they call this freezer burn metallic. And so this is the Nissan color. And the greens and blues, these are all Porsche and BMW and Audi colors.
And then
so that's how we operate.
This
We don't really
is
do
the bike that, this is the racer bike that guy was talking about, right?
Racing bike, yep. This is
That's cool.
That honestly, I would sell my bike and buy that.
Yep. For 120 front and rear, it's actually a pretty competitive light.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. Is this a demo or?
That is a demo. Yeah.
Ooh.
We got a couple size small demos.
That's cool.
How long are you guys in town for?
We leave Saturday.
Maybe Saturday?
Pretty much.
The weather will rebound. It's a little chilly today for our standards, but I'm sure it's probably okay for you guys.
It's been great compared to what we have at home. I haven't looked at the weather since.
And you're wearing flip flops and 40 degrees. You are not from around here.
No. I had shorts on this morning when I was out doing maintenance on the bikes.
Yeah, this is like warm
It's
basically.
still a little. No, it's not. It's a little chilly.
Well, but
For my
like
blood, it's chilly.
compared,
This one.
and I would definitely
ST
take
on it.
this.
This XT is good stuff. I have it on mine.
Look at the shifter.
That's what we run on all of our.
Oh, it's e-shifter.
That has 3 bikes in it.
Dad,
Yeah.
they have electronic shifting on the bike
Not
that I
one
want.
bike that doesn't match, no.
Yeah.
Dad,
For
they have electronic
components.
shifting on the bike that I want. Yeah.
Appreciate it.
All right, well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem.
Oh,
Thanks
you
for
know,
stopping by.
you guys have a question for me about this? I was reading about this.
Yes. It's really great stuff. Take here. Try this. This is the
Okay.
This is the cleaner.
Okay.
This is also made in China. It was this weird project.
That's a beautiful bike.
Very long story.
I wonder how much that one
That
costs.
this
The Fade.
chemist who was
It's got electronic shifting and everything.
I never realized that Payson rode for
cyclist. He wanted to know if we
Wait, what's his name again?
desire
Payson.
getting into the lube market, if there was something great. The conditions here are really tough because there's so much steel dust and doing gravel and things like that, so they wanted to kind of develop a lube that withstood a lot of that in both wet and dry conditions, but don't go with chain or anything, so it is a wax-based lubricant, and it's gonna go on like cake icing.
This is
And
awesome.
you're gonna let it set overnight.
I wonder how much that
And when you get to
costs.
your bike the next morning, it's gonna be it's gonna be
Yeah.
and it's
So then just, I mean, clean everything.
That
Clean
midnight
everything.
blue, that navy blue bike that Roy showed us with gold.
whatever.
It has like a Notre Dame bike.
That, you know what? That,
And you'll tell.
just replace those colors onto that frame,
Hey
Mom.
Paul, this might be the answer to your,
Oh, yeah?
yeah. He was
Take a sample bar.
he was talking about waxing chains, and I used to do that on my road bikes.
This is wax based, so it's a lot less viscous, obviously, than wet. You don't have to hot pot it or anything like
Okay.
that, but you get all of the benefits of a hot pot wax. And to be quite honest, I think it's a lot more hydrophobic than a hot pot wax, and so
Okay.
it's good for super dry dusty.
Yeah.
So it's really good for wet, muddy, gnarly
Yeah.
stuff too.
Yeah, because we ride basically beach sand.
Yeah.
Where our trails are.
And
So
that,
it just-
I mean, even though it's on the mountain, yeah, I know Michigan's super safe. This would be great.
Okay.
For sure. It's interesting, I've just noticed this, but the longevity of my chains, since I've used this now for probably a year and a half, I'm getting twice the life per chain than I normally get regularly using this stuff.
Okay.
And I think it's just because it really does a good job of keeping a lot of that grit and sand and dust that otherwise get in and just
Yeah.
grind and
Yeah.
That,
And then
it's like
this is the
gold.
cleaner stuff. That's the cleaner. This stuff.
Yeah, cool. And then that's one of the ones that has like the changing color. It's kind of like the oil slick ones.
But it's a really great degreaser, and it will take, it's not just a short way to. So. Right out, then on the website. What's the process for this? Just, get it wet. Get that on. What I like to do is I'll get it on all the rollers. Just set a little bit and back down. Let it set for a little bit. Maybe that's just a weird little thing I do. Right. And the rest of the bike.
$9 a week allowance,
Clean the chain, backwards, frontwards, plates, and then just rinse it off. And dry it. And then when it's dry, add that, let it sit overnight. Don't wipe off the excess, you're going to be compelled to because it's going to go on like cake icing, like I said. But then when you get to your bike the next day, it'll be translucent and clear and you won't even know that you have it on there.
Sweet.
I have
Hey,
a
babe.
question.
Did you bring your, babe?
How much is that
Bring
pipe?
your credit card?
I do.
That paint job or the bike?
I don't know how much money is
the
on it.
bike.
What do you?
That one?
I can buy you, I can afford that, yeah.
It's around 13,000.
Demo bike.
13,000.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Less than I guess.
There's a lot of high-end parts on that bike. And the paint job
You know what I want?
is a very time-consuming paint job that costs a lot.
What would it be if instead of that paint job, that so like the midnight blue, but with the gold logos and stuff?
Yeah, that take about $1,000 off of the paint job.
So 12.
Yeah.
Well, better start saving up for me.
Better start saving up.
Yeah.
And make sure you're done growing.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, guys, and thank you so much for the tour.
Yes, sir.
And thank you. Bye. Bye. Thanks for watching. Bye.